As Obi-Wan says, the lightsaber is a Jedi's life. And is it just me, or does it feel like each trilogy tries to one-up the last? I mean, we went from one blade to double blades to flickering blade with two slightly shorter blades on each side. But that doesn't even compare to the Legends universe, which features weapons like lightsaber rifles used by Jocasta Nu, or even one called a flicker phase blade, which turned on and off at random intervals. Also, I'll look briefly into the origins of the saber and how it's changed from a blade attached to a cord into what we have today.
There we go. Just give it a bit longer and...
Watch what you're doing with that thing.
Since I'm going to assume most of you know the basic variants, I'll come back to those in a second and start with the lightsaber gauntlet, which was a device that could be attached to a Jedi's arm and emit two short lightsaber blades from it. Apparently the energy it produced was actually different than that of a normal lightsaber, even if it was very similar, and it was worn on a gauntlet that looked kind of like a vambrace that I would wear. It originally came from concept art for Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, done by Derek Thompson, which as you can see shows Plo Koon with two green sabers coming up from his hand. Eric Esmarin is a Legends example of this type of weapon, who actually had a suit with small lightsaber blades jutting out all across its surface area from his arms to his knees. And I feel like this one is a really cool idea for like a lightsaber suit, even if it is kind of impractical. I mean, what are you gonna do, like belly flop onto your enemy? I don't really know, but I don't know, it's still kind of a cool idea nonetheless. And next up is the sickle-bladed lightsaber, which is from canon and was a specialized variant of lightsaber that copied a metal scimitar rather than the normal sword shape of most lightsabers. It was used by Darth Noctis, who was a character developed for the Rise of Skywalker lore in the book Dark Legends, as someone from the early life of the Sith who became an empress and ruler of the galaxy and then traveled to Exegol seeking immortality. And as far as my personal thoughts on this one goes, I feel like it's kind of a little bit goofy, not gonna lie. But it's okay. I mean, I think they were also in a little bit of a rush when they were designing this, according to the behind the scenes on the books. Very similar to the Rise of Skywalker itself. Now back to the main lightsaber types. For new viewers, the single-bladed saber was the most commonly used by both Jedi and Sith, especially for the ability to choose between having a good grip with both hands or going Dooku style, and one-handing that thing to fit a more elegant practitioner. The double-bladed lightsaber, aka the saber staff, had two blades emitting out of either side of an extended hilt and was notably harder to master than the normal lightsaber, but also was based off of the Zabrak quarter staff and granted what is known as more slaughter per swing by some because it could offer rapid attacks from minimal movement on the user's part. And more slaughter per swing kind of sounds like a heavy metal band that Darth Maul, Dooku, and Darth Sidious would make. I mean, hey, Christopher Lee was in fact in a heavy metal band, truthfully, so it's not that out of question. Lastly, worth mentioning of the very basic ones is the crossguard lightsaber, which had two vents below the main emitter called quillions. The shorter blades could protect the wielder's hands and also be deadly in battle themselves, like we see Kylo Ren demonstrate on Finn in The Force Awakens. They were used a lot in ancient history, especially at the Scourge of Malachor, and also a High Republic Jedi named Stellan Gios used one with retractable physical cross guards, which would go back into the hilt when turned off. So I feel like it's a pretty good look with the retractable cross guard, although the whole point of it is kind of to also serve as a weapon, so I don't know how this one would really work like that, but I mean, I guess if you got it in the right position it might work. I don't know. Back to the wacky variants though, we have the lightsaber cane, which was used by Tera Sinube, an aged Jedi Master who proved surprisingly diligent with his weapon despite how slow he acts the rest of the episode he's in, which is called Lightsaber Lost. And I know this because I just watched Lightsaber Lost, and also I'm a big Clone Wars nerd, so I probably know this anyway. But I mean, actually not that bad of an episode. People say it sucks, but I think people hate on the early Clone Wars seasons too much because I like them, even if the later seasons are better. The lightsaber cane worked by pulling out the top of the cane, which would reveal the sword once the shaft of the cane was pulled off. Also, Darth Maul used one in Star Wars Rebels, and its main purpose overall was for concealment reasons, because no one's expecting this old guy to be carrying around a lightsaber, to be fair. The dual-phase lightsaber was in lore used by Darth Vader and would allow him or other holders to switch between two lengths supported by two kyber crystals, which could confuse and overwhelm the enemy. The flicker phase lightsaber, like I mentioned in the intro, would ignite and extinguish randomly during combat or in use in general. They were not approved by the Jedi for use as they could be dishonorable due to them being difficult to block when going against. While this isn't stated anywhere, I believe this lightsaber would have most likely been possessed by Jedi and Sith who use the Trikata lightsaber form, as this is an unorthodox form that focuses on turning the blade on and off to break enemy defenses, making this a randomized version of that. Next up, the Lightwhip, my personal favorite of the video, featured a long, flexible blade that could measure over multiple meters in length and had multiple small crystals rather than one big one. The reason for the look is that the hilt had no cell barriers to split up and separate the plasma, with them usually having a single winding blade, but some Cat of Nine Tails style whips did also exist as well, because apparently that's like something I'm just supposed to know about. The light whip was difficult to defend against because it could just bend around your lightsaber. Also, it had a pretty good success rate because of how rare they were, and most people weren't trained to fight against a wielder of one. And they of course had great range too from their lengthy form. Unfortunately, they had to be swung quite wide to gain momentum, and also were pretty bad for defense against enemies with significant speed and or strength. Some notable users of the light whip across Star Wars were the Sith Lord Githany, who used it a millennium before the Battle of Yavin, and also the Sith Lady Lumaya, who was a servant of Darth Vader and the Emperor, and they used one made with Mandalorian iron and had multiple tassels made of the same powerful material. Next up was the holographic lightsaber, which was a type used for training and is seen in Hu Yang's hand when practicing with Sabine in episode 3 of Ahsoka. This lightsaber variation had a thick hilt and thick yellow blade, and could also record all the hits it sustained during a training session with these little ring things here, and for the master to look at afterwards. That is why it recorded it. Also, the lightsaber pike was one of a spear or lance-like shape that had two types, one like a glaive with a long lightsaber resistant spear and then a shorter blade on the end, while the other looked like a defensive version of the double-bladed lightsaber with an extended hilt coming out pretty far on each side of the hand placement, and also two smaller blades on each end. Also, the lightsaber rifle was a weapon that worked in conjunction with a normal lightsaber by loading it onto the open slot on top of the rifle. It would then create an overwhelming blast that was extremely destructive and had up to 5 shots before the lightsaber being used would melt and the rifle would overheat. Jocasta Nu, the famous Jedi librarian, would use one of these against Vader 1 year after Order 66. To finish off the video, I'll briefly be going over the history of the lightsaber and how it got to the modern Star Wars version now. One of the earlier phases of the lightsaber was the Force Saber, which actually channeled the Force power of its wielder and activated through connection to the Force rather than by technology. It was crafted from a special form of crystal and also relied on alchemy to make it. Later on, the Proto Saber was also developed, which was connected by a cable to a power pack due to power pack technology limitations of the time. But anyway, that's it for this video. There's also a join button, which is completely optional, but would truly help me out in the channel if you want to do that. We stream almost every Saturday now, so don't miss those. Sorry I didn't do it last week, but I also told you that that would happen, and I think my internet should be better now, so all is well. These types of videos come out every Friday at about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya.